Hello everyone, it's Liv here, aka Story Minded, and I'm finally back with another IGCSE video. I can't remember if in my last video I mentioned this. I feel like I have. I apologise if my camera starts freezing. My webcam is not good. I had this to deal with when I was trying to do my last British Sign Language assignment, but I got through it, so that's okay. So I can't remember if I said it in my last video or not, but I have a feeling that the IGCSE anthology has updated, and obviously I can't access that, so I'm going off, I think, the 2016-ish, or 2018, 2017, can't remember the exact year, but I'm going off the former one. So if you have access through your school websites or wherever you get your, if you're homeschooled, if you have like a different place where you go for like curriculum based stuff, just make sure you check and you know what anthology texts you're studying or meant to be studying, because even if it's updated, the text might still be the same, but obviously because I can't access that, I won't know for sure. But this next one is, I have 2 videos left to do, and this is the next non-fiction one in the anthology. It's called Young and Dyslexic, You've Got It Going On by Benjamin Zephaniah, and I'm just going to kind of do a live analysis, so that means I haven't actually read it, I haven't pre-read this, I'm just going to read it and bit by bit try and offer a bit of analysis for each part. So the first little header bit says, this article was published in The Guardian October 2015 and is adapted from Zephaniah's contribution to Creative Successful Dyslexic, which I'm guessing is a book written by Jessica Kingsley. And dyslexia is a learning difficulty where you struggle with spelling predominantly, and you can have difficulty with reading despite having normal intelligence. So it begins, as a child I suffered, but learned to turn dyslexia to my advantage, to see the world more creatively. We are the architects, we are the designers. So even with just that first part, I feel that's a very sort of powerful tone that's being created, like the metaphor of we are the architects, we are the designers. It's kind of a very sort of empowering statement, and kind of already starts to generate ideas and concepts of overcoming adversity, and shows that this writer is a very strong person, and the collective we kind of connects with the audience and it gets you involved, and it's kind of like showing that it's a message that is intended to be shared with everyone. So it's a sort of very empowering kind of feeling it creates. I'm of the generation where teachers didn't know what dyslexia was. The big problem with the education system then was that there was no compassion, no understanding, and no humanity. I don't look back and feel angry with the teachers. The ones who wanted to have an individual approach weren't allowed to. The idea of being kind and thoughtful and listening to problems just wasn't done. The past is a different kind of country. I think that's a really powerful kind of like either figure of speech, or I guess it could also be considered a metaphor, because it's saying the past is a different kind of country, sort of reflecting on how the world is changing, and for his generation how different it was, and there was a lack of it's kind of starting to create themes of like ethics within education, but it shows that he's a very open-minded type of person and a very forgiving type of person, because he mentions how he doesn't look back and feel angry with the teachers, because he acknowledges that there were some who wanted to take an individual approach, but they weren't allowed to because of the system. So we're already starting to get a sense of like some of the bigger themes about this piece in terms of like the ethics of education and how different it used to be for people with dyslexia. At school, my ideas always contradicted the teachers. so that means like go against. I remember one teacher saying that human beings sleep for 1/3 of their life, and I put my hand up and said, if there's a God, isn't that a design fault? If you've built something, you want efficiency. If I was God, I would have designed sleep so we could stay awake. Then good people could do 1/3 more good in the world. So this once again really sort of shows the kind of person that this author is, like how even at a young age their worldview was very open, and they're very big on equality and equal opportunities and looking at the world in an optimistic kind of way. And it also sort of highlights how he felt differently to his teachers. And obviously back then you weren't meant to think for yourself. You weren't meant in an education system. You were there to be taught. You weren't there to engage in discussions with your teachers, which is really weird to think about, because especially as a literature student, that is like the basis of our subject. We debate and we like share ideas and discussions, and we have different viewpoints, and you have the opportunity to argue with critics and existing research out there, and then that enriches your understanding of a text because you get into dialogues. So that's quite a quite scary thought. And where's it gone? Oh, that's it, semantic fields. So semantic fields are like a group of words that have similar associations, or they're connected together. We're starting to develop a semantic field concerning design or architecture, you could call it, because in the beginning we are the architects, we are the designers, and then in this bit of dialogue he's talking about the idea of a design fault. And so there's a lot of like construction imagery or architect imagery, and this idea of like building something better, like you're starting to get a sense of that. So I guess you could tie that in with his thought processes or his feelings about wanting a better future or wanting a better world to exist. The teacher said, "Shut up, stupid boy. Bad people would do 1/3 more bad." Why isn't that a positive outlook? That's not what it says. That's just that's depressing. I thought I'd put in a good idea. I was just being creative. She also had a point, but the thing was she called me stupid for even thinking about it. Once again, just highlighting how, like, nowadays you would be done for harassment or you would definitely be called up on that, or hopefully you would be called up on that. That's just horrible. You never call a student stupid. That's just absolutely disgusting. But it kind of shows, once again, this generational difference. I remember a teacher talking about Africa and the local savages, that's in quotation marks, and I would say, "Who are you to talk about savages?" She would say, "How dare you challenge me?" And that would get me into trouble. So once again, we're delving into the theme of racism and like cultural appropriation, and it's just showing once again the stark generational differences and how that's acceptable, because that is not acceptable to call anyone of any culture savage. There's a lot of issues you can pull out of that. And once again, it really highlights how this writer feels strongly about equality and compassion and understanding, and the questioning. Again, it's like the repetitions of questions shows how curious he is and how willing he is to stand up for what he believes in. Like he's been told before by other teachers that he's stupid and he shouldn't have like an opinion, like, who are you to challenge me? And he's saying, well, no, who are you to say these hurtful things? So it's a very powerful piece of non-fiction writing. Once when I was finding it difficult to engage with writing and had asked for some help, a teacher said, "It's all right. We can't all be intelligent, but you'll end up being a good sports person, so why don't you go outside and play some football?" I thought, oh great, but now I realise he was stereotyping me. So stereotypes is like when you have a series of pre-assumptions. Is that even a word? Pre-assumptions. Prejudices, there we go. you have a set of rigid ideas about a particular group of people or an individual. You look at someone and based on your upbringing or based on different factors, you will look at someone and you'll think they fit into this box, they fit into this category. So this teacher is clearly looking at him and thinking, oh, he's not good at writing, oh, he's not academic, therefore but you'll be good at sports. And clearly for him, he strongly feels that, or maybe at the time he agreed with it, or it's hard to interpret if the "oh great" is like sarcastic or not, or you might have genuinely thought, oh yeah, there's a way out for me, but he says, but now I realise he was stereotyping me. And I mean, that's obviously once again bringing in issues of gender stereotyping because he's male. It's like, oh yeah, but you'll be a sports person, and it's like, who are you to assume what your students like or don't like? It's like, oh. So that's all fun. Oh, I realised I forgot to read the background and context. I'll do that at the end of this video. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place. Okay. I had poems in my head even then, and when I was 10 or 11, my sister wrote some of them down for me. Oh, that's lovely. That shows how resourceful he is. The fact that he's able to think about what he wants to do and he got his sister to help. That shows how he's overcoming his learning difficulty. And just as a side note, like some of my own English teachers and who ended up becoming my colleagues when I did my TA stuff, 2 of them actually had dyslexia, or they're dyslexic, and it was just amazing and so inspiring to me that they still have this love for English and this passion for English. And even though spelling and reading can be a challenge for them, mainly I think it obviously, once again, like with any condition, it impacts the individual differently. So I remember one of my colleagues in particular, she'd really struggled with spelling. But it's just really inspiring to think that no matter what challenges you face, you can overcome them and be better. So it shows how resourceful he is. His actions show how resourceful he is to get his sister to help him, rather than just think, oh, well, I can't do this easily, so I'm just going to give up and not write poems and not be a writer and stuff like that. When I was 13, I could read very basically, but it would be such hard work that I would give up. I thought that so long as you could read how much the banknote was worth, you knew enough, or you could ask a mate. That's really interesting as well, because that's kind of bringing up a different issue to do with, like, I guess, worth and, like, how you view the world. And we do live in a very commercial world, and the fact that, you know, as long as you can read how much money you have, that's all you need. And it's like, it's quite sad. It's quite poignant to think about that. Especially when he talks about his school experiences and how motivated he is to to stand up and say, this is wrong, you shouldn't think like this, and challenge his teachers. I got thrown out of a lot of schools, the last one at 13. I was expelled partly because of arguing with teachers on an intellectual level and partly for being a rude boy and fighting. I didn't stab anybody, but I did take revenge on a teacher once. I stole his car and drove it into his front garden. I remember him telling us the Nazis weren't that bad. Wow. Like, a round of applause for him, because that is a horrific statement to make. Telling us the Nazis weren't that bad. Yeah, I can understand completely. I don't agree, but I can understand completely why he would steal a car and drive it into his teacher's front garden. So technically he was returning the car to him. That is a very... I like this writer. I need to find more of their writing because that is brilliant. And it's interesting how he's using the idea of intellectual and then juxtaposing it with the view of his teachers for being a rude boy and fighting. So it kind of shows how he was almost pushed into the stereotype. Because in a way, it's almost like self-fulfilling prophecy. If someone, like, self-fulfilling prophecy is when you tell yourself something about yourself enough times, you'll eventually believe it. But it's interesting how the teachers themselves were almost imposing this, like, particular mindset and viewpoint on him. So the consequence of that is he eventually dropped out of school at, like, 13, which is insane to think about. He could say that in the classroom. When I was in Borstal, there used to be a program about Borstal on TV. That's for those of you who don't know, Borstal is like, I don't know if it still exists. I'm not sure if it still exists, but it's a residential training centre for young people who are deemed delinquent. Some of them, from what I've seen from the old documentary series about it, some of them did have very severe home issues and stuff. But basically, it's like a boot camp for like delinquents or young people who are trouble. But once again, that's a lot to do with labelling, and they might not necessarily have the counselling support they need and stuff like that. So once again, showing how he's been labelled. When I was in Borstal, I used to do this thing of looking at people I didn't want to be like. I saw a guy who spent all his time sitting stooped over, and I thought, I don't want to be like that. So I learned to sit with a straight back. Being observant helped me make the right choices. So once again, that's shown us his thought processes. He's a very observant person, and he understands a lot about appearance in terms of like how you carry yourself and how your image can be interpreted by others. And I mean, that's a very intelligent thought process to have for someone who's been labelled as unintelligent by his teachers. So it just proves how wrong they were. A high percentage of the prison population are dyslexic, and a high percentage of the architect population. So once again, we got that semantic field of the ideas of architects. And that's very interesting, actually. You don't really think about that in prison, how there's a high number of people who are dyslexic. If you look at the statistics, so this is using statistical information to back up, like to give credibility to your argument. That's the word I was looking for. I should be in prison. A black man brought up on the wrong side of town whose family fell apart. In trouble with the police when I was a kid. Unable to read and write with no qualifications. On top of that, dyslexic. So that list is very showing a lot of the racial stereotyping that occurred back then, unfortunately, and even in today's society there's probably still stereotyping going on, which is ridiculous and stupid, and it shouldn't happen because there's no need for it. But I think staying out of prison is about conquering your fears and finding your path in life. When I go into prisons to talk to people, I see men and women who, in intelligence and other qualities, are the same as me, but opportunities opened for me and they missed theirs, didn't notice them or didn't take them. So that's a really interesting point. The fact that he may be challenged by writing, but there's different forms of intelligence, and you can see the flickers of it when he was younger in school, having a curious mind and having a very passionate stance and standing up for what he believes in, arguing with his teachers orally. So in terms of communication, verbal communication, he's incredibly intelligent. He's able to articulate himself, which is probably one of the best skill sets you can have. Like, there's multiple skills that are valuable, but being able to communicate with people is like an everyday life skill. And obviously you can communicate in different ways and learn different skills to develop that. But it's really interesting to see how he's kind of gone into like a motivational speaker role, is what it appears to be like. I never thought I was stupid. I didn't have that struggle. I like the short, snappy sentences because it really kind of emphasises the strength of his voice. If I have someone in front of me who doesn't have a problem reading and writing telling me that black people are savages, I just think, I'm not stupid. You're the ones who's stupid. I just had self-belief. And that's true. It's like not allowing other people's perceptions or other people's labels to stick to you. It's about believing in yourself, which is very hard to it can be very hard to achieve. But once you have that, words of other people who you don't care about, they don't hold power over you anymore, because it's like, you can say whatever you want about me. I'm proud of myself. I know who I am. And you just get on with your life. For my first book, I told my poems to my girlfriend, who wrote them down for me. It really took off, especially within the black community. I wrote "with love" for "with love." Oh, that's interesting. That shows not only does that have connections with his dyslexia, I'm guessing, but also "with love" is he's done it WIDLUV. That's also dialects. So like embracing your cultural differences as well. People didn't think they were dyslexic poems. They just thought I wrote phonetically. Okay, that's clever. I like that. I take that back. He wrote it back. And that is clever, actually. You don't think, yeah. He got me there. Good on him. Yeah. That's very clever. Oh, that is very clever. Because it plays with the reader's expectations. At 21, I went to an adult education class in London to learn to read and write. So that shows he's improving himself after dropping out of school at like 13. So good on him. I wrote more poetry, novels for teenagers, plays, other books, and recorded music. I take poetry to people who do not read poetry. Still now, when I'm writing the word not, I have to stop and think, how do I write that? So it shows, obviously, because even though he has bettered himself, he's always going to struggle with his dyslexia, and that's not his fault. That's just a part of himself that he has to deal with. I have to draw something to let me know what the word is to come back to it later. If I can't spell question, I just put a question mark and come back to it later. So once again, showing how resourceful he is, like coming up with these different techniques to help him. The teacher told me, you are dyslexic. And I was like, do I need an operation? Oh, I love it. I love the humour in this. It's a really humorous piece of writing as well. She explained to me what it meant, and I suddenly thought, I get it. I thought I was going crazy. Because that's an interesting thing as well. Like, if you know what you have, you can then take steps to improve yourself. But if people are just labeling you as stupid, that's like really damaging. So once again, the idea of ethics. When I look at a book, the first thing I see is the size of it, and I know that's what it's like for a lot of young people who find reading tough. When Brunel University offered me the job of Professor of Poetry and Creative Writing, I knew my students would be officially more educated than me. I tell them, you can do this course and get the right grade because you have a good memory, but if you don't have passion, creativity, individuality, there's no point. Words to live by, definitely. In my life now, I find that people accommodate my dyslexia, so that means like make allowances for. I can perform my poetry because it doesn't have to be word perfect. Performance poetry is brilliant. But I never read one of my novels in public. Oh my god, that would be so hard. When I go to literary festivals, I always get an actor to read it out for me. Otherwise, all my energy goes into reading the book and the mood is lost. If someone can't understand dyslexia, it's their problem. In the same way, if someone oppresses me, so that's like obviously pushing them down, making them feel small, bullying them, all those kinds of ideas. Me, because of my race, I don't sit down and think, how can I become white? It's not my problem, it's theirs, and they are the ones who have to come to terms with it. I love this writer. This writer is amazing. I really need to get his poetry. If you're dyslexic and you feel there's something holding you back, just remember, it's not you. In many ways, being dyslexic is a natural way to be. So once again, he's directly addressing the audience by using the ideas of you and kind of involving the audience with his message. What's unnatural is the way we read and write. If you look at a pictorial language like Chinese, so that's obviously with all the symbols, you can see the word for a woman because the character looks like a woman. The word for a house looks like a house. It is a strange step to go from that to a squiggle that represents a sound. So don't be heavy on yourself. And if you are a parent of someone and now he's changing the people he's addressing, with dyslexia, don't think of it as a defect. So that's something that prevents proper functioning or a problem. But defect is also a very... it could be seen as a very discriminatory word. Like if someone's disabled, you would never say they have a defect. Like that, once again, a generational thing. That's a really negative, disgusting label to use. Dyslexia is not a measure of intelligence. You may have a genius on your hands. Having dyslexia can make you creative. If you want to construct a sentence and can't find the word you are searching for, you have to think of a way to write round it. Once again, showing his resourcefulness. And alternative thinking. This is a really good non-fiction piece to represent alternative ways of thinking. This requires being creative, and so your creativity muscle gets bigger. Kids come up to me and say, I'm dyslexic too, and I say to them, use it to your advantage, see the world differently. Us dyslexic people, we've got it going on. We are the architects, we are the designers. So repetition of that beginning message again, which is really powerful, and how he's inspiring the next generation as well to overcome their difficulty. It's like these kids are proud to be like me, and if that helps them, that is great. I didn't have that as a child. I say to them, bloody non-dyslexics. Who do they think they are? I love the humour in this. It's very powerful. It's a very powerful piece of writing, and I hope this has helped. I'm just going to finish up with reading the authorial context. So Benjamin Zephaniah has earned widespread respect for his ability to overcome spite, prejudice, and ridicule. Because of his difficulties with reading, his teachers dismissed him as unintelligent and not worthy of their attention. Rejected by a number of schools, he was unable to read when he left education at the age of 13. Unusually and bravely, he refused to give in to despair, acknowledged his difficulties, and joined an adult reading class. Since then, he has taken an imaginative and constructive approach to life's challenges. In this article from the Guardian newspaper, Zephaniah explains how this happened, from his early difficulties in school to his determination to write. He performed some of his early work in church at the age of 11, but found himself with a criminal record 2 years later. Despite this troubled period, he has gone on to become a successful poet and writer. His publication within a well-regarded national newspaper can be seen as an ironic contrast to his earlier life. Anyway, I hope this video has helped, and I'm looking forward to making the next one soon. Bye!